All right, hello everyone. Looks like we're just about live, or we are live. Awesome. Hello everyone, and welcome to this stream about Adobe Creative Cloud Design. Welcome everyone. I see the National, I see Mike's wife, I see Polka, Polka Tuna. Welcome everybody. We're just getting started here with a live stream about 10 Adobe keyboard shortcuts that you should know about. I tried to pick ones that work pretty much across all the products with a couple of exceptions. So we'll just get started here in just a second, but glad to see so many of you already piling in the room. And welcome. And hello, Jerry Brooks, and glad you could make it, as well as Robert. Hello, welcome everybody. And let me make sure I got this window up as well. Just making sure I get all the windows open so I can see all your beautiful comments. All right, cool. Let's get started. So for those of you who are new to this live stream, we're doing ones across various Adobe properties and channels. I happen to be streaming on the Adobe CC Design Facebook page. That's where this really originates, and of course I'm simulcasting it to other properties as well. But right now the main focus is for design. So we're going to be talking about keyboard shortcuts that I'm going to show you examples of that work across Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, but they could work across Premiere Pro, Muse, After Effects, and other Adobe products as well. So like I said, I try to keep it to keyboard shortcuts that work across multiple applications, although I know at least one of them is specific to Photoshop. So why don't we, it looks like we got enough people here for a quorum, so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone that's jumped in and just popping in. Let me switch over to my computer, and as I get to my computer, I can show you that I have a virtual keyboard up on the screen. Now that virtual keyboard up on the screen is to give you just a visual reference, so when I'm pressing a key, you'll be able to see it. Of course, I'm on a Mac, so every time I press this key, which is the Command key on the Mac, that would be the Control key on Windows. So if I don't say it, if I say Command by mistake and I don't say Command or Control, you would know on Windows that that would be the Control key. Same thing for the Option key on the Mac. That's this one right here in the lower left corner, lower right corner. That would be the Alt key on Windows. So Command or Control, Option or Alt. That's usually the way I'll explain it in both cases. So that way you'll be able to see it as I'm doing it. And I don't really do a lot on keyboard shortcuts because if I were just hitting keys while I'm doing a tutorial, you would never know what I'm doing. So I usually always explain things from the menu or the manual way of doing things, even if in my own personal life I use the keyboard shortcut to do it. Because if I don't show you where it is and I just always show you a keyboard shortcut, you would never know where anything is. So for example, whenever I'm doing Lightroom, I'm always hitting Command and the quote symbol, or the apostrophe, I should say, to create a virtual copy. And so when I go to show people how to create a virtual copy, I have to think about what menu is that in again, because I never use it from the menu. I'm always doing it from the keyboard. And by the way, it's under the photo menu. So this is like a first for me to be talking about keyboard shortcuts and dedicating the stream to just keyboard shortcuts. So that's what this is all about. And like I said, assume, even though I don't show it in all the applications, unless I say otherwise, the keyboard shortcut I'm showing should work across multiple applications. So it doesn't matter if you're in Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Muse, After Effects, Premiere Pro, so forth and so on. The keyboard shortcuts should be the same. One of those keyboard shortcuts, and I will demonstrate it across the board just so you can kind of get a feel. So again, we're doing 10, so this is the first one. Command or Control K. So when I do Command K in any Adobe product, that should bring up the preferences. So I'm in Photoshop and that went straight to the preferences. If I pop over to Illustrator, hit Command K, it brings up the preferences. If I pop over to InDesign and hit Command K, it brings up the preferences. So luckily, where we can, we have used the same keyboard shortcuts. And I know there's some inconsistencies. I'm not here to pretend that there aren't. There are definitely some inconsistencies that I wish were tighter across the applications, but in many cases, it's almost more trouble to change it at this point than it is to, and make it the default, than it is to just leave it the way it is. And the reason I say that is because if you spent the last 10 or 15 years learning keyboard shortcuts, and then we arbitrarily change them so they match across the board for those few that don't, then you're probably going to be upset. So with that in mind, even though Command K works across the board, and there are many that work across the board, for the ones that don't, for the ones that you wished were something else, a lot of people, actually I run into this sometimes when I'm out demonstrating out on the road, that a lot of people don't realize that many of the applications have the ability to create your own keyboard shortcuts or change them to what you want them to be. So for example, in InDesign, if I didn't like a particular keyboard shortcut, I can just go up to the edit menu, come down to keyboard shortcuts. That will bring up all the keyboard shortcuts in the various categories. So all the ones under the file menu, all the ones under the edit menu. So I would find the one I'm looking for. And if it doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, because a lot of things don't, I could type in a new one. If it had a keyboard shortcut, let's find one that does. Maybe find and change. All right, find and change. Okay, so it's just keeping the default ones, but find and change is Command F. And if I wanted to change that to something else, then I can go ahead and type that something else in. Now I will forewarn you that if you go and create your own keyboard shortcuts, you're rarely going to find one that isn't already taken. So with that said, if I wanted it to be Command E, for example, instead of Command F, then Command E is going to bring up a menu to tell me probably, hey, that's currently assigned to export. Do you really want to assign it to this? And if I say yes, then now export is no longer Command E. And you can make keyboard sets. So for example, if I were to make that change, it's not going to let me make the change to the default set because it's the default set and it should always remain intact. It will then make a new set that I could call, for example, Terry's keyboard shortcuts. And now I would be customizing the keyboard shortcuts to just what I want them to be in every single program. So just keep in mind, if you're unhappy with a keyboard shortcut, or if the thing you do all the time doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, in not all of the applications, but in many of them, you can make your own. All right, so welcome everyone from around the globe. I'm seeing people check in from London and Zambia, and I will try and speak slowly as your English is not good, but I will do the best I can. All right, so with that said, so the first one, we only did one so far, Command K, and I just pointed out that in many of the applications, that if you want to create your own keyboard shortcuts, like I'm an illustrator now, I can go to keyboard shortcuts, customize my own. I can go to Photoshop, go to edit and keyboard shortcuts and customize my own. So learning them is great, learning the defaults is great, but if you ever run into a situation where a program doesn't do what you want it to do when a particular key is pressed, if that application has customizable keyboard shortcuts, change it to whatever you want it to be. All right, so second keyboard shortcut, and this is one of my favorites. I'm going to show it in Illustrator, but it does work across the board. I use this one all the time. So let's say I've got this graphic here and it's below everything else. Let's see if we can bring it up to the front. There we go. And now I've got this graphic in place, and let's say I pull it over here and I want another one on the other side. So we know in the operating system, and therefore across the board, we can do Command C for copy, or Control C on Windows, Command V for paste, or Control V on Windows. So that's been there for, since the beginning of time. But instead of filling the clipboard with that object, which is what it would do if I use the operating system Command C, Command V, I just want to duplicate it. I don't want to copy it, to the memory and then put it back down multiple times. I just want another copy. So my favorite keyboard shortcut for this, and this works across the board, holding down the Option or Alt key and just dragging it. When I hold down the Option or Alt key and drag it, that will make a copy of it. That will make the duplicate for me. So I can do that as many times as I want. I want another one up here, hold down the Option or Alt key and just drag it, and that will make a copy. let me undo and undo, which we'll get into undo in just a minute. But let's say I want a copy and I want that copy to be exactly level or lined up with the other one. So what I would add to that, this is a bonus tip, as I'm dragging it with the Option or Alt key held down, notice I can pull it up or down so I could actually get it off center, which is fine. But if I hold down the Shift key in addition to the Option key, it will keep it perfectly lined up. So that way I can Option or Alt drag it. So hold down the Option key or Alt key, start dragging, then add the Shift key as you're dragging. It will keep it perfectly aligned, whichever way you start dragging it. I do that all the time because usually when I'm dragging something over, I want it to stay perfectly lined up with the one I'm getting it from. So shortcut number 2, hold down the Option or Alt key to duplicate something in an Adobe application. And again, that's one of those that works across the board. Okay, now we're going to go to Photoshop, and we're going to do one that's specific to Photoshop because of the way Photoshop works. So I'll explain it as I do it. So let's say, for example, that I do the unthinkable. I grab my paint, I grab a regular brush, I make the size of that brush smaller, I don't create a layer first, and I do that. Oh no, I made a mistake. Well, we know, we've known this for years. Command Z, undo. Whew. Control Z on Windows, undo. Whew. Great, undid it. But what if you did something by accident? What if you clicked and you didn't realize you clicked somewhere? And then you went on to go do other things, like that, and that, and that. Well, in Photoshop, Command Z will undo the last thing you did. And you're thinking, oh great, okay, I'll just hit Command Z again. And it puts it right back. And you're like, no, I didn't mean for that to happen. No, it's not on the layer. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Command Z does do multiple undos in every other application except Photoshop. Photoshop is the only one, hey Sydney, Photoshop is the only one that Command Z just toggles between undo and redo because of the history behind Photoshop. When I say history, that's a good way to say it. Photoshop for many years only had one undo. So that's why Command Z was always undo and redo. It never did more than one. And then around, I think it was Photoshop 5, not CS5, 5, got history, or the ability to finally do multiple undos. So instead of, and I don't know the rationale behind this, but instead of making Command Z or Control Z just go back many times, they added an extra function under the edit menu called step backwards. So there is undo, which we've been doing, but which is undo the brush tool, but step backwards means step backwards in time from all the things I've just done. So it would be Command Shift Z. I'm sorry, hold on. Command Option Z, sorry about that. Command or Control, Option or Alt Z. And then that will undo multiple times. And of course, there's also a step forward. Shift Command Z. And that will Shift Command Z, step forward in time. So Alt, Option, Command or Control, Z, steps backward in times. Shift, Command or Control Z, steps forward in time. So yes, Photoshop does have multiple undos, but no, it's not tied to Command Z, because Command and Control Z, for whatever reason, the Photoshop team never tied it to those in Photoshop. So there we go. You can step back in history. Now, does it have unlimited undos? It does not. So keep in mind that you can only go back so far. How far can you go back? And this is getting off topic a little bit, but if we go to, in the Photoshop preferences, if we go to, I never remember where this is. I always have to stumble upon it. Is it not the history log? It is it's dealing with history. Could be performance. Yes, performance. If you go to performance, it is the number of history states. So right now it's set to 50, which means I can go back 50 things or redo 50 things. Can I set it to 100? Can I set it to 1,000? Can I set it to a number that's higher? Sure. But the higher you set it, the more RAM Photoshop will need because it has to remember that many more things. So 50 is the default, which is up from 25. It used to be 20 and 25 back in the day. But now it's up to 50 by default. And yes, you can change it if your machine has plenty of RAM. All right, so with that said, that was number 3. Command or Control Shift Z and Command Control Option Z. Can you get rid of the dot and leave the smiley? Okay, so that would be, question is, what if I wanted to do nonlinear history, which is really what they're asking for? Yes, you can, but you'd have to set it up first. If you go to the History panel, there is a function in the History panel and under History Options to allow nonlinear history. So you wouldn't be able to do it from the keyboard, but you would be able to step back to a state without necessarily undoing other states. So it gets kind of hairy by doing that, but sure, you can by going to history and allow nonlinear history. It can be done. And that's an old Jedi trick. All right, let's go back. All right, here's another one. This is one that we all use all the time, hopefully, or you will from now on. I was just going to show one, but I'm going to make this 2 parts. So number 4, Command or Control, and the plus sign will zoom in. So if I keep hitting Command plus, it will keep zooming in. Of course, the opposite would be Command or Control minus, and it will zoom out, and it will keep zooming out. So that's cool. But let me add to that, because a lot of times, yes, we want to zoom in or zoom out in maybe 1 or 2 steps. But what if I wanted to quickly just get the image up to full size or get the image up to a specific, zoom ratio? So Command or Control 0, that's 0, not O, 0 on the keyboard will always do fit. That says take the image and fit it to the size of my canvas, even if it's bigger than 100%. So right now it's 128% in the lower left corner, and yes, you can see it. Command 1 or Control 1 will always take it to 100%. Some applications have like a Command 5, 50%, Command, whatever, but those two are pretty consistent across the board. Command 1, 100%, Command 0, fit in window. And why is this important? I'm gonna give you the ultimate tip keyboard shortcut that will help you. So let's say, for example, let's place something else on this one. This is an ultimate Photoshop tip. Let's say that we want to place, I need something big. And probably none of these are going to be big enough. Let's go in to my Adobe stock library where I've got some actual stock images that I've licensed, and they should be bigger. Yeah, this one should be bigger. Let's pull this one over. All right, not big enough, but it's bigger. You notice how I've got the handles to size it down. That's free transform. So whether I brought it over from the library or hit Command T for free transform in Photoshop, that's going to give me these handles. And then a lot of times when you're bringing something in big, the handles are like they are now. 3 of the handles you can't even see. They're off the side of the canvas. My favorite keyboard shortcut for dealing with this is the one I just shared with you. If I want to get to the handles, don't start panning around and moving around and scrolling around to find the handles. Just hit Command 0. Command 0 or Control 0 will always do a fit in window. So therefore your handles will always fit in window when you do a Command 0. No matter how big they are, no matter how far they span, it will always fit the entire image and the entire handle boundary box inside the window so you can grab any handle you want. So now if I wanted to scale that, I can hold down my Shift key and scale that down and move that around and put that wherever I want, because now I can see the handles by zooming out. And of course, I can lock that in once I'm done. So Command plus, Command or Control plus or minus, zoom in, zoom out. Bonus tip, Command 1, 100%, Command 0, fit down to the size of the window or artboard that you're working on. All right, next up, number 5. And we'll pop over to InDesign for this one because this is where I first learned it. It works in other applications, but it is my favorite now, and I learned it first in InDesign, so we'll do it here. My favorite text tip for keyboard shortcut is when you've got some text highlighted and you want to make that text bigger or smaller. Of course, you can simply go up to the type menu and type in whatever font size you want, if you know what you want. If I knew I wanted 133 points, then I can just type it in. But if I don't know, and I just need to visually see it get bigger or smaller, my favorite keyboard shortcut, Command or Control in Windows, Shift, so I'm holding them down so you can see them, right there on the keyboard, Command, Shift, and then you'll notice it doesn't show it, but on the right side of the M, there's the comma and the period. The comma is right above it I'm not sure why it's not showing it, but is the less than symbol. On the period, it's the greater than symbol. So if I do less than, it's just going to make things smaller. If I do greater than, it's going to make things bigger. So you can do Command, Shift, comma, and period, but greater than and less than makes more sense. All right, so that's my favorite keyboard shortcut, and that does work across multiple applications. I'm using that all the time. I need to see something as it's getting bigger or smaller so I know how big to go or how small to go, and I don't sit there typing in point sizes or pulling them down from the menu. All right, with that said, let's jump down to number 6. And number 6 is the another one of my favorites, and this is a good example for it. Notice how tight this looks, how close the letters are, the CC design, how tight they are. They're touching basically, they're so close. That's because these have been tightly kerned or tracked together. So if I put my cursor between the D and the E, and I hold down my Option or Alt key, the Option or Alt key, and I use my left or right arrow. Now see, let's see if I see my arrow keys here. Okay, I had to bring the arrow keys over. All right, my left or right arrow. So my right arrow will increase the space between those characters. That's not typing a space, that's doing it by point sizes. So that will tighten it up and even make them overlap if I want. So I can even do that. I can get them overlapping, or just by simply hitting the right arrow key, left arrow key to adjust the kerning and tracking. If I want to do it for the overall word, just highlight the overall word. Do the same thing, Option or Alt, and right arrow key to loosen up that space, left arrow key to tighten up the space. While we're at it, let's pop back to Photoshop. I guess we can do it there. And because we don't have any type there yet. So let's say we want to go in and we want to, a lot of people this is just a basic tip, has nothing to do with keyboard shortcuts. Most people know that in Photoshop you can click and start typing. But what a lot of people don't realize is that you can also click and drag to create a bounding box for your type and then start typing. So now that box is my container for the type that I haven't typed yet. All right, so let's go ahead and type once upon a time. I'm going to hit the return. I was live streaming about keyboard shortcuts. Okay. All right, so now that I've got that type, if I highlight it all, remember how we did number 6 was the Option or Alt key to adjust the kerning and tracking this way? What if I want to go this way? That's the leading. And that would be the same trick, just with the up and down arrow keys. So Option or Alt, and then up arrow key, and Photoshop does this is why I did it here. It's going to jumble it all together the first time. The minute you hit the up arrow key, no matter what, it's been doing that for years. I call it a bug. The Photoshop team calls it a feature, but it's been doing that for years. Now I can go with the down arrow key and space it back out. So the up arrow key is like it sets it from whatever it was to 0, which is why it's all jumbled on each other. And then from there, you can go in and tighten it up. Now, you can combine them. So while I'm adjusting the leading, I can do the size, Command Shift less than, and tighten it up. And then go Well, now that I made it a little smaller, let's do that. And also let's track it a little closer to each other, like so. Now, what if I don't want the hyphenation? I don't want keyboards hyphenated. Instead of me trying to hit a soft return there, all I would simply do is go to the paragraph control panel and turn off hyphenate. That's it. And now it will not hyphenate that paragraph no matter what. Okay, that was again a bonus tip. Let's now go into, let's go back to Illustrator for this one. It does work across the board, but I'm trying to spread the love. A lot of times you may need to scroll or move around. So for example, I'm in the selection tool and I want to just move this whole page up. I don't want to always have to jump to the hand tool to do it. So if I just press the space bar, I'm holding the space bar down, as you can see on the little virtual keyboard. As long as I hold it down, I get the hand tool. Whenever I let go, I'm back in the tool that I was in. So that's a quick, you just temporarily want the hand tool in any of the Adobe products, press the space bar and hold it while you move around. Once you get it where you want, then you can let go and it will return you back to the tool you were in. So for example, if I was in the rectangle tool and I was about to draw a rectangle and I need more room, space bar, pull it down, now I can draw my rectangle because I'm still in the rectangle tool. So that's an oldie but goodie. The last two are not modifier keys. So it's not Command, not Option, not Shift. They're just straight up keys on the keyboard. So the only way these would work is if you're not already in the type tool, because you need to type a letter. If you're in the type tool, then you're typing a letter. If you're not in the type tool, then these two work. So in all the Adobe applications, for the most part, all the ones I could think of with the exception of Lightroom, there's a selection tool. So there's either a selection tool like in Illustrator, there's a selection tool in InDesign, there's a move tool in Photoshop, but it serves the same purpose. If I want to move that layer around, then I'm using the move tool. So in each application, to get to that selection tool, as long as you're not in the type tool, you just tap one time on the keyboard, the letter V, as in move. See what I did there? Move tool. All right, so that will switch you over to the move tool or the selection tool. I'm already in it on this one. Let's go back to Illustrator. I'm in the rectangle tool, selection tool. So the V will always take you to the pointer, basically. No matter which application you're in, if the application has a pointer. Lightroom doesn't have one, so that's why it doesn't work there. And last but not least, although we did some quick zooming, we did the Command plus, Command minus, Command 0, Command 1, we did all of those. But what if I want to zoom to a specific zoom level? I can hold down the Z and zoom and let go, and depending on the application, it will either switch me back or stay on the zoom tool. So the Z key will always take you to the zoom tool so you can zoom in whichever application you're in. So same thing here, switch to the zoom tool, zoom in. Now that one, when I let go, it went back to the selection tool. In Photoshop, I believe it's the same way. Z, hold it down, let go, it switches back to the tool you were on. So with the exception of one, which doesn't switch back, the rest are okay. Okay, so someone's asking, why doesn't my spacebar engage the hand tool? I'm constantly typing H. I don't know off the top of my head, but one thing I can have you check right off the bat is sometimes the modifier keys or tools won't work the way I just described if the caps lock is down. So make sure your caps lock is not down if you're having a problem with a particular keyboard shortcut. That may or may not solve your problem. But it was the first thing I thought of as far as troubleshooting. So caps lock, because sometimes that can introduce its own sets of keyboard shortcuts. All right, so quick recap. Command K, Control K, that brings up the preferences. Option or Alt to duplicate an object. So even here in Photoshop, I can duplicate that and have two of them. Command Shift Z will step backward, or I'm sorry, Command Option Z, I should say, will step backwards, and Command Shift Z will step forward in Photoshop. Command plus and minus, control plus and minus will zoom in, zoom out. While you've got text selected, the command or control shift and comma and period, greater than, less than, will make the type bigger visually as you press the keys, or smaller visually as you press the keys. That was number 5. Number 6, to kern and track, to make the characters tighter. Select what you want, or put your cursor between the two letters you want, like so, and then hold down your Option or Alt key and press your left or right arrow keys, and that will allow you to kern and track your type, or individual pairs of letters together. Same thing for leading. So for example, if I highlight all of this and I wanted to make more space between the lines, hold down the Option or Alt key and the down arrow key will give me more space between the lines, leading. The space bar, as long as you're not in the type tool, will always give you the hand tool, except for the one guy it's not working for. And that will allow you to move things around and temporarily let go and switch back to the tool you were already on. And the V will, no matter what tool you're in, except for the type tool, will always switch you back to the move or selection tool. And Z will always switch you to the zoom tool and allow you to zoom in or out. I'm dragging diagonally. You used to have to hold down the Option key to zoom out, but now you don't. You just drag diagonally in the applications that have been accelerated with GPU performance. Okay. Calendars design would be a nice tutorial. It's not my thing. I haven't done a calendar design in probably 15 years, so I'm probably not the person to give you a tutorial on calendar design. If you've been doing them, you know more than I do. How do you increase or decrease the brush size? That is a common one. Let me go to a layer where I can actually brush. That would be, and now I learned this the hard way. When I used to give this tip, people would come back to me on social media and say, I don't have those keys. So I'm saying this on an English keyboard. If your keyboard doesn't have these keys, I don't know what the keyboard shortcut would be. So you'd have to go change it or make it or see what it is. But on a US keyboard, I'm in the brush tool. If I want my brush size to be bigger, that would be the bracket keys. So the ones next to the letter P, making it smaller with the left bracket, making it bigger with the right bracket. All right, so I've given out not only my 10, but I've given out some bonus ones, and hopefully they helped you. That is it for today's stream. So I hope you guys got something out of it. Thank you guys for joining me from all the various platforms around and from around the world that you have. By the way, if you want to see more graphic design, you should check this out. That 3-day live stream is happening right now. So today is Wednesday, so they're on day number 2, and it goes till 5 p.m. Pacific time, so 8 p.m. Eastern. 3 graphic designers streaming all day long about tips and tricks, just like what I'm doing here, in all the various graphic design tools and elements. So you can catch that stream, in case you missed the URL, at adobelive.com. So head over there as soon as you're done here, adobelive.com, finish watching today's stream with graphic design, and they'll be on all day tomorrow. So with that, everybody, thanks